All right, good evening. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their busy weeks to join us here. Chris Lester, I'll be your presenter today. This topic, Social Security, seems to always get a large interest. So I broke it down into three sections. So if you weren't able to see it, the first part last week, just let us know and we'll send you the link. This week's going to be part two. I try and keep these calls to about 15, max 30 minutes. There's not a lot of slides, but there's a lot of information I like to touch on just to make sure that you get it. We're not selling anything here. This is really just educational, help give you information that you can make informed decisions as you approach retirement, starting to think about Social Security maybe a little bit differently. And then if you do have questions, reach out to the advisor that invited you here. And if they're not able to answer it, I'm certainly happy to do so. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, our program that we run at Rutgers, Raritan Valley Community College, some of the local universities in the past, is a 501c3 nonprofit. We charge a tuition, and we do that not only for the local community, invite people in, and it is a paid tuition, but we've also done it for staff and alumni at Rutgers. And it's just been like content in a format that's been well received. And we're really hoping to be able to get back to doing this again soon. Now, this slide was from last week, and I put this back in here just to help to really emphasize what can happen by making decisions based on somebody else's opinion. So if you recall last week, I had everybody on the call write down a sentence, which Social Security decisions should not be made in a vacuum. Well, what does that mean? That means that you have to look at your specific data. You have to go back and research it. You should go to ssa.gov, create an account, get your statement, go back and look at what is the federal government viewing your past work history as. How many zeros do you have? Because what they do is there's two parts. There's a 40 quarters or 10 years. And then once you qualified that hurdle, then they're going to take your highest 35 years and they're going to then run that through a formula to calculate your Social Security. Now, there's a term, and on this slide here, you can see it says FRA, or full retirement age. And, if you were born between 1943 and 1954, you would get 100% of your Social Security on your birthday, the month of that you turn. Okay. If you follow water cooler advice, or you follow your next door neighbor's advice that told you, hey, I don't think Social Security is going to be around. I think you should take it and get it because the government's going to be broke, right? I mean, there's that is, I just read an article that, that's probably about almost 70 to 75% of Americans fear right now is they think Social Security is going to run out. And most of the experts say that that is not likely. Not only is it improbable, but for everybody that's on this call, it's highly unlikely. Adjustments obviously will have to be made. There's trust funds. I mean, if I was a millennial today, yeah, maybe there would be, it might not be quite as lucrative as it is now. They might move the goalposts, but it's not just going to go away. Right. But also remember, Social Security was never really designed to be a retirement plan. Yet many of us view this as an integral part of our retirement planning. And so what somebody will do is they'll say, hey, I'm 62, I want to get it right away. And if your full retirement age was 66, well, that is a 25% reduction in what you would have gotten. So if your paycheck was $1,000 at full retirement age, well, now you're down to $750. If it was $2,000, now you're at $1,500. And you say, well, that's fine. I don't have longevity in my family history, and everybody in my family dies by age 70. Then mathematically, you probably made a good decision, right? I don't know when anybody's going to die, and that's why I say we can't, think in those terms. But if you're on this call and you're married, that's why I started with this slide, because making that decision early can have serious negative consequences for your spouse. So once you elect it, and that person, if you look here, and in this example, full retirement age was 66 or 67, full retirement age is 66, a spousal beneficiary would get 50%. But then if their spouse was 66, they'd actually take a reduction if their full retirement age was 67. Where it starts to really be impactful is if that person, took it at 62, their spouse doesn't get 50%, they get 35% of the overall pay. So I know I threw a lot of percentages out there. So here's how I tend to frame it. So if your spouse was, in my example, your full retirement age, you were able to get $2,000 a month, and then your spousal benefit would have then been $1,000, right? 50% at full retirement age. However, if you took it at 62, and in this example, full retirement age was 66, 50% of 1,500 would have been 750. So now your spouse has taken that haircut as well. And that's what has to be calculated. So that's why I really do stress, hey, Social Security decisions shouldn't be made in a vacuum. And then that's not even to mention the taxation of Social Security. And Social Security is subject to provisional income calculations, which is a whole nother section of the IRS code that people just get the deer in the headlight look. So, it is confusing. Obviously, it's not late dinner conversation, but I just always caution against listening to the person at the water cooler that says, oh, I'm taking mine because I think the government's going to be broke. Don't base your decision on that person's opinion. Now, you might recognize this gentleman here, Winston Churchill, ExSpouse Benefits. Lady Nancy Astor. Winston, if you were my husband, I'd poison your tea. Churchill said, and if I were your husband, I'd drink it. Right? Obviously, ex-spouses, quite often relationships sour, but there can be some rules associated with collecting on an ex-spouse's Social Security. So if you have an ex-spouse and you were married 10 years, you must have been divorced at least 2 years, and the claimer must be unmarried. You are now subject to spousal benefits based on your ex-spouse's Social Security record. So, in my example, $2,000 a month, you were married for 2 years, been divorced for 2 years, and you're entitled to 50% of that. And you don't even have to notify them. Like the spouse doesn't even notify that you filed for benefits. Now, widowers benefits, unfortunately, people pass away. But if you remarry before you reach age 60, age 50, if you're disabled, you cannot receive benefits as a surviving spouse while you are married. Okay. But if you remarry after you reach age 60, you will continue to qualify for benefits on your deceased spouse's Social Security record. So again, it's just, it's something to pay close attention to. If you're uncertain, run it by our office. We'll help you to figure out. However, if your current spouse is a Social Security beneficiary, you may want to apply for that spouse's benefit on his or her record. You really just have to run the math, right? Which one will pay a higher benefit? If that amount is more than your widow or widow's benefit, you will receive a combination of benefits and equal that higher amount. So the living spouse or divorced spouse will step into the greater of the two individual benefits. And that is why, again, it's worth repeating, Social Security benefits or claimants shouldn't make these decisions in a vacuum. You can collect as early as age 60, but follow the rules carefully and don't overlook spousal continuation. Just because you're divorced doesn't mean you give up some of your rights, along the way. So that was this week's topic. I know might seem like I went a little fast. Overall at the end got 20 minutes. One of the things that we have offered is a Social Security optimization report. So if you'd like to see what waiting, if you recall last week that, hey, listen, maybe waiting until, if your full retirement age is 67, maybe we wait till 68 or 69 or nowhere past 70, right? Well, we can run a report to help you to understand what these decisions might look like for you specifically, right? It's something that we're willing and able to do. Anybody, if you were invited here by another advisor on this call, certainly would ask you to get in touch with them. We can certainly do that for you. Here's our disclosures. Just say that I didn't make up any of this stuff. These were all slides that we use from our presentations at Rutgers at the business school. And again, here's my contact information. If you have questions, right, always feel free. I try and just make it a point to reach out and be available to folks. If people have questions, uncertainty, we can certainly help there. So I want to thank each and every one of you. Stay safe out there, and God bless. Have a great day. Bye-bye.